Welcome to Filmbuff Live here on Filmbuff. I'm your host, William Patrick Coleman. Who out there is familiar with documentaries, huh? Because I'm actually not necessarily a fan. As a film fanatic, you do have your genres that you're not really in tune with. So, for example, Westerns is not necessarily my forte, but worse than that is documentaries. Documentaries started in the early 1900s, and if you want a history lesson on that, you're going to have to look it up, because basically what it is a documentation from the filmmaker's point of view on a person, place, or event. They can go from anywhere from a subject matter trying to survive in the woods to a rock band and their concert tour. More often than not, I find them to be very one-sided or told from a specific point of view. Therefore, it's very tainted, or it has an agenda. Not all of them are like that, of course. You have some of your best documentaries out there. Titles come to mind like The Last Waltz, Grizzly Man, or the most popular one, Hoop Dreams. Very, very big documentary. In the 90s, they became sort of a political thing with filmmaker Michael Moore coming in, and between Roger and Me and Fahrenheit 9/11, they became very popular with political agenda, and that's kind of the more I associate them with. It's not necessarily the case, as our guests here today have kind of proven. These gentlemen are very, very, very interesting. I find them very exciting, and the subject of them and what they're doing very enticing. These guys are gentlemen who do documentaries on the genre films more of the 80s specifically. When I met them, they were in the middle of doing a documentary on a film that I'm a huge fan of called Robocop. If you don't know, it's the 1987 Paul Verhoeven film starring Peter Weller. It's actually playing right behind me right now. And their journey for it being a fan-funded movie, meaning that the fans of their company were helping to budget this movie so that they could go around the world and meet everybody from the movie and interview them. And we're talking every single little character, every single extra, everybody, right? To interview them. The movie took about 7 years to construct. Ended up becoming not just about Robocop, but its sequels, Robocop 2 and 3, as well as the whole legacy of Robocop, including cartoons, video games, and toys, marketing included, and the remake that followed. But I have such an admiration for people who spend so much time on their creative journey, and they're dedicated to seeing it come to fruition or close. And so I'm extremely grateful and extremely humbled to be able to use this show in order to to be able to sit with these gentlemen again and have a conversation with them. They are the founders and creators of Dead Mouse Productions. Now, there's 3 of them, but we're going to have 2 out of the 3 today. We're going to have Gary Smart and Christopher Griffiths. The 2 founders and producers of Dead Mouse Productions have also done documentaries on Hellraiser, the series. They've done documentaries on Fright Night. They've done documentaries on It, the television movie starring Tim Curry. And there has been talks about them doing Police Academy. And that's the 7 or 8 movie series of that. So they are currently promoting and celebrating their latest victory of Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, which is the documentary on actor Robert Englund. Now, not just specifically Freddy Krueger, but Robert Englund and his accomplishments as a whole. So I'm very, very, very pleased and honored to welcome tonight to the show. Welcome to Filmbuff Live to Mr. Gary Smart and Chris Griffiths.
How you doing, mate? Are you all right?
Yeah, all right. What's up, guys?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Welcome to my show here on Filmbuff Live. It's a little sidebar of the actual show Filmbuff, but of course everything movies related. And I knew I had to get you guys on here sooner or later at some point because we share a similar love and interest with Robocop, the film Robocop. But today you're on here specifically because of your guys' accomplishments in the field of documentary. Documentary is actually not a field I'm very familiar with, which is why I kind of wanted to have this to be able to explain some of the advantages of a documentary film. So like recently I have watched for the second time Pennywise.
Okay.
I really delved into it, you know. There's something really interesting I find about Pennywise right off the bat. It's that it's kind of like you guys listened to the fans as they were talking about, for example, the spider. I don't think I've had a conversation about it where they don't complain about the spider at the end sequence. And so you guys kind of delve into that and you explain, you know, who did it and the what behind it, and that they're aware of how people feel about the spider and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I kind of really like that. But you guys are a part of the production company Dead Mouse.
Yeah.
Do you guys can you go into the history a little bit about Dead Mouse? Well, first of all, we got on here, we have Gary. Go ahead and introduce Gary Smart, right?
Gary Smart, producer, director,
and
writer.
Director, and Mr. Christopher Griffiths.
And that's me, Chris Griffiths. Director, editor, a little bit of everything, the everything man for Dead Mouse Productions.
And there's a team. I know that there's a team of you guys, but specifically, I believe there's like 3 of you that kind of lead it, right?
Yeah, 3 of us are directors of Cult Screenings and Dead Mouse Productions. We own the company, 3 of us, myself, Chris, and Adam.
Yeah.
You probably met.
Guys are remarkable. Your guys' team is remarkable. I love following you guys and seeing what you come up with next. Would you please go into the history again? Sorry for interrupting. Of the how Dead Mouse kind of began.
Very briefly. So long story, but very brief.
Oh, it's a long story. Okay.
No, it's not too long. I'll make it quick. So I started doing writing many years ago, and I wrote a book on Return of the Living Dead called The Complete History of Return of the Living Dead, which was published in the UK and published in the US. From that, I worked on More Brains, Return of the Living Dead, which was a documentary about that film and that franchise, with Mikey Perez and Tommy Hudson, who would be people behind Never Sleep Again, Chris Lake Memories.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so we got a connection there with those guys, and Mikey's been a friend ever since. I then started doing some screenings in Birmingham, in the UK, of some classic films with some guests, and we did a screening of Return of the Living Dead. Invited Don Cowforever, who was the actor from that film, who played Ernie, the mortician. Chris came along to that as just a punter, basically, who was obviously a paid member of the audience to come and watch the show and watch the Q&A. I didn't know Chris at all, no connection with him whatsoever. Halfway through the show, Chris approached me because he had to leave early because he was he had to get a train back home. And obviously Don was doing his Q&A and his signing a little bit later on. So Chris kind of, my interpretation of the story is a little bit different to Chris's. I remember being quite cheeky, but I think Chris asked me, could he get his poster signed, the event poster? And instead I said, come backstage and we'll go and obviously meet Don together. And I introduced him to Don because Don had been a friend for a few years. And then I kind of clicked with Chris straight away. I kind of liked him straight away. You know, he was a film fan. He travelled obviously a distance to come and watch this show and see Don. You get a connection with people, don't you, instantly where you like them. And I kind of liked Chris straight away. I don't know why, but I just did. And then he added him on Facebook, as you do. And we were starting production on Leviathan, the story of Hellraiser, and How Bad in the Hellraiser 2, that documentary, which was a mammoth doc. We had a director already, and we had an editor and that kind of stuff. And I know Chris was into film big time, and Chris did I invited Chris to go and do a Q&A with me, with Brian Cox, the actor, who's in Manhunter, and obviously now Succession.
Just finished Succession.
Yeah, it's finished. Yeah, Chris was brilliant on that podcast. A podcast wasn't a podcast. It was a live stage interview with Brian. And again, you just know someone loves film. And then I tried to get Chris on board in the project. The other guys didn't want him, I think, because he was an irritant and he was young and very silly. I saw he was going to add value straight away. I think as a film fan and somebody who was a little bit detached from Hellraiser, it was a good idea bringing him on board because then he wasn't so obsessed like I was, and obviously could do it from a very film kind of point of view. And I got him over to the States. We did some interviews over there, got him obviously as assistant director. And in the end, long story short, Chris basically became a director by default, really, because Chris was directing it. We had some issues with our original director and some of the crew there. And then we formed Cult Screenings, and Chris was director of Cult Screenings, which part of that is Dead Mouse Productions. That's a long, short story of how we met. I'm sure Chris can add something to that.
And where we are now. Chris, do you concur?
I concur. He said he was going to give you the short version. I think he got a nice little play-by-play there.
What an exciting! I didn't know that part. That's pretty exciting to be able to come on board at such a young age, too, right?
Yeah, it's been 10 years. So I think, so Chris, I mean, I was 30, I'm 41, so I was 31 maybe. Chris, I would have been about 12 at the time, probably.
Yeah, sorry.
So, no, early 20s. Yeah, so you just see something in people, don't you, sometimes? And I think
intuition, especially in the industry, you kind of have to rely on that, and it plays out more in your favor than it doesn't, surprisingly.
I don't know, we've made a few mistakes along the way. We've had a few people who worked with us in the last 10 years who no longer work with us, but Chris is I can't get rid of Chris because he's the director of the company, so I'm stuck with him.
So he's smart. He got himself wedged in there. He can't get out even if you wanted him to.
I can't vote him out now.
Since then, you guys have together. I know I might be missing one here, but I know that did it start with The Offer or the short film The Offer?
No, that came after. So that
came after. Okay.
Yeah, that came after. After Brewster, that might be. We did some narrative on Brewster Fright Night with Peter Vincent. It was our first. So it was our first kind of dip in narrative where Chris could direct an actual actor. Obviously on the set, and Chris did a fantastic job there. Obviously with Simon Bamford, who played Peter Vincent for us. So that was kind of our first kind of dip, and we did some little.
And you have that. You have that. You mentioned Hellraiser. Pennywise was kind of a big deal for you guys. Pennywise is really interesting because of how many people you got on there. You don't just have like the kids; you have their counterparts and the director and producers and all that. That's a really interesting one. My particular favorite, of course, Robocop. And when I met you guys, it was at a moment where you were constructing it, and I don't know if this is how documentaries are constructed, but it's not like in overnight or a couple months thing. This takes a while. You have to try to get a hold of. You want to get a hold of everybody who is a part of it, who has a important piece of information about how it was constructed and stuff. At the time that I met you guys, you weren't so sure about certain people you were going to be able to get.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Chris finish his story, but I think you met us when we just literally arrived in California, and we were literally just sitting there. We had a few people lined up for interviews, but we were sitting there having a kind of production meeting in the Hard Rock Cafe, just trying to go, shit, we're here for 3 weeks, we've got to film people. And that's, I think, when you kind of introduced yourself to us, and that coincidence that you loved Robocop, and obviously then
I guess real fast, I'll just say this real fast for the audience, that how we met was kind of interesting because you weren't even in a section that I was serving normally, but I had been walking by. I believe it was a very slow day, and like it just happened to have the time to talk, and I saw these guys sitting at a table. And I know that there was more than one Robocop shirt, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird because we're nowhere near 1987. So, and I have a personal connection to Robocop, being it's the first movie I ever saw in theaters. My dad did not know it was rated what it was rated. He was trying to take his son to share something with his son, and back then they didn't really think too much about the ratings. And so he takes me to see Robocop, and I'm sitting there, and the first 5-10 minutes. Had 209 storms in that room, that boardroom. And I won't ever forget Kenny getting blasted away the room, and then the squibs and just blah, 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 blah. And my jaw hit the floor. I had never seen anything like that. My life could have gone one of two different ways. And it went the way of like, this is so creative and so like fascinating. How did they do this instead of a different way, a different dark way? But meanwhile, my mom's at home ironing clothes or whatnot, and on TV is the commercial that says the rating. And so by the time my dad and I got home, he got in a lot of trouble. But nevertheless, Robocop is very instrumental in my obsession with film in particular. Over time, it says many, many different things to me as a storyteller and a narrative. It's got many, many different voices. And so, I saw a couple of guys that are sitting there with the shirt, and I automatically had something in common with you guys. And I got to talking to you, and sure enough, you were there to do the Robocop documentary. And I just flipped, and I automatically just fell for you guys. But I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to let people know how I met you guys. And so flash forward, here
And
we
that was
are.
nearly just 7 years ago that happened.
Was that 7? Okay, geez.
So it's been a long time in the making, Robodoc. As Gary
It
said,
feels like longer than that, honestly.
it feels.
But,
I mean, it feels even longer when you're in amongst it. I think as well. Time seems to just sort of slow down. But I mean, as you know, Gary said, we've been doing all these documentaries. We love them. I mean, if anything, Pennywise was actually shot after the principal photography for Robodoc. But you know, hopefully we've been quite transparent online with our movements, what's been going on. We've certainly tried to ensure we've shared information. You know,
you
even
guys have come a long
preview.
way and made many accomplishments along the way, though.
And so, yeah, it's probably our the most arduous project any of us will probably ever do, for that matter. And you know, I know it's going to be worth it. You know, I'm very confident in that. But you know, we set out when we were talking to you. We must have had, I think we only had like 8 people confirmed.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And by the end of that trip, we had about 30, 40 people interviewed. So that was good.
Yeah.
Then there was people we couldn't obtain at the time, so we had to outsource some interviews. That then tallied up to about somewhere in the region of about 65, 70. And then in the subsequent years, we've racked up to 100 people from Robocop 1, 2, 3, the series, the comic books, the games. So it's just become this behemoth. It's just like this.
So great. I didn't know that. It's not just one.
It's this unstoppable force that's just kept growing. And maybe we should have been a bit more disciplined to say, look, we've got to call it quits here. But it's almost just, it became an addiction, a bit collecting something. Like, I don't know, I never did it myself, but you collect Pokemon cards. I've got to have every single one. And so we ended up doing that. And of course, you know, it took us some time and a bit of negotiating. I'm not involved in this side of the business, but to obviously have a glaring omission, which was the man himself, Peter Weller, involved. And we thought we could do it without him. I think we could have to a certain extent, but, you know, the fact that, thank God, he hasn't passed away, people would have obviously noticed the glaring omission in our roster of people. And so we got him in the end. And obviously then when you put him in there, you're like, holy shit, yeah, no, we needed him. And so we got a great interview. So it's just been a bit of a problem child of a project, but we've been lucky in that now we've always been independent for years. So everything we've made, we got manufactured ourselves legitimately, you know, from a Blu-ray distributor or manufacturer in China. And then they were all sold from Gary's house in boxes. And then the world's changed now, you know, COVID happened for starters, streaming became more popular. And we've got in now with Screambox, who've been incredible. And
yes, and I was actually going to lead into that. Just the end of last year, you guys made a deal with Screambox.
Yes.
And you have now taken this monstrous project, which I would assume because of the deal, you were able to keep so much more a part of it and split it now into 4 separate docuseries.
Yeah, it's 4 episodes,
4 episodes
seasons
for the first film.
Yeah.
God, congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
There's more to come.
I think that's beautiful, man. I really do, because you guys stuck with it, and because you didn't say no and you let it become an addiction. Do you think that somewhere along the line that's where Peter Weller kind of came on board, or would there have been a time where you guys have been like, okay, that's enough, you know, we have what we have, and then you just would have let the Peter Weller thing go?
I think when we met Peter in Manchester, and he knew of us. I'd already spoke to him many times on email. He's always very polite and courteous to me. He was always very polite, and I got his direct email address, but he was always a no. But when we met him in Manchester, we were surprised. He says to us, you know, I want to do this, make it work. And we had to go and make it work for him, but he was keen to do it. Where we'd watch YouTube videos of him at shows where people asked him a question, why aren't you in Robodoc? And he was going, you know, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Okay, so
it was kind of,
it's funny you mentioned this, because I think I was at one of these shows. Now, what happened was, and I myself was surprised to be part of an anniversary screening of Robocop at the Egyptian Theater. So it was the old print, right? The old print. And what they were doing it for, or what he specifically was there for, was in honor of Miguel Ferrer. So he had just, the late, great Miguel Ferrer had just passed away, and he was there to kind of honor him. And even in his Q&A, he was very like, "You guys are weird," you know, like he was very stern, and he was clearly this is an actor. He's an actor. He's an actor, and in Robocop, the role of Robocop specifically constricts his face, constricts his movement, and he's very good at what he does. And Robocop is very robotic, but it's very, I can understand being constrictive as an actor, and definitely not the role you want to be remembered for only, kind of thing. So I kind of understand that, but I do know of these screenings, and I don't know if somebody had said something in the audience, but I was pretty grateful to be there and him be in the audience.
Yeah, somebody asked him a question. Why I think it was that exact one. Why aren't you in Robodoc? And he gave quite a very short, stern answer. But that was many years ago. And I said, and I think him himself, he started obviously embrace Robocop a bit more. He did a lot more conventions then. He was doing a lot more stuff overseas in Europe regards to the show. So when we met him, it was at a time, I think, where he was embraced again. That bit of renaissance Robocop was for him again. And he was brilliant. I said, once we got him, he was brilliant. And, I said, he was always polite to me. I got to say, as much as we probably were effing and blinding quite a lot because we were so angry that he wasn't going to do it, he was always professional. He was always polite and courteous. I can't fault him on that. To us personally.
You got Verhoeven by then, though.
Yeah, we got everybody.
He was on the first set. We were supposed to have Miguel Ferrer as well, but at the time we were filming, which was about a year or so before that screening, or maybe 2 years, he was ill by that point.
He was ill, yeah.
We obviously didn't realize what the severity of the situation.
We had a
really wish we could have got him, but he was confirmed. So we were really gutted to not get him, but we certainly we didn't rest on our laurels with everyone else. I mean, we got the whole gang. We've got Bixby Snyder. We've got the would-be rape victim, who's Jamie Lee Curtis's stunt double from True Lies.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
We got one of the creeps. Unfortunately, not the one who loses his jaffas, but the other one. And that was just by sheer blind luck, because Gary has been working on a police academy documentary.
Oh man, you beat me to it. I was gonna mention that because I had read something about that.
There's an interesting connection though, and this one really threw me. So I think one day, because I haven't been quite involved in this project, but the one day I was watching back maybe some footage from Robodoc, it was on that rape sequence, the rapists. And I looked at a shot and I paused it and I was like, that's Scott Thompson from Police Academy. Gary already had a relationship. So one of the guys who goes to the Blue Oyster, I never realized was the would-be rapist in There's More Hair Down There. So when we went back out to LA to shoot content for the Robert Englund documentary, this is what we kind of do. We get as much as we can. And admittedly, we've got such a backlog of work that at one point we were in a studio where in one room was a green screen setup where we were getting pickups for Robodoc. In another room was a projector for Police Academy interviews. And in another room was just a natural lighting background for Robert Englund. So we had like 3 lots of sort of interviews for projects happening at once, which was kind of quite incredible. It made us feel kind of like, this is it now. Look, we're in industry. But in that time, we got Scott Thompson. So that was like, oh my God, we've now got him included. And he gives a great interview about that sequence. And we got Sage Parker, who plays oh God, I really should know this as a big, huge fan of the film, but the doctor with the very pretty doctor with the glasses.
Oh, the female doctor.
Yeah,
this is for you. The Crown.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, so she so it was amazing getting her. So as I said, this thing's just a monster, and honestly, and I know for you as well as a fan of the film, no film's ever had this treatment. I've watched all these documentaries.
Certainly no Robocop doc. There are Robocop documentaries, but none as extensive as and as focused as you guys have. You've made the ultimate documentary for a movie.
We've pulled it apart. I mean, there's certainly some bodies out there in the internet world at the moment claiming that they're going to do the biggest documentary ever, where they're going to pull a film apart and show every increment. But it's like we've got this we've got this coming out at the end of the year, so hopefully we'll beat them to the punch.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I've never seen
for as
anything
much
like
time and much time and sweat and like love as you put into this, it's clearly going to show honest stuff. You got Ronnie Cox. Did you get Harley on there?
So
The
no,
old
yes,
man?
we've got Dano. We haven't got Dano Hurley because unfortunately he passed away some
He
years
passed
ago.
away. I was going to say I didn't know if it
I
was.
think any living member, I think like literally the only people that spring to mind is Hophead, who robs the convenience store. He wasn't available, and oh god, who else was there? The William Shockley, I think his name is, the creep who gets it in the bollocks, as we call it.
Oh yeah.
He was unattainable, but virtually, I mean, the amount of people who came out of the woodwork, who was like, holy shit, we got that person. Rob Bottin's obviously another glaring omission, but to be honest, it's kind of well known in documentary circles. Rob Bottin's kind of like, I think, put the whole interview process to rest now. I think something might have happened historically, but I know he does real estate now, and he's not gone on camera for anything for some years now.
All things considered, even the smallest of roles that you've included is kind of a big deal. You said something also about not just Robocop 1, but the series in general and the games and whatnot. So are we talking like, what about, and I know that there's a history about this gentleman, but Frank Miller.
Frank Miller, I think we definitely tried for, didn't we, Gary?
Tried Frank Miller, yeah.
Okay.
I think
some people just
it's
like,
a bit of a bone of contention, certainly with 2. I've always had time for 2. I think I always remember I'd seen the first one, and somehow 2 was the one I was like not allowed to watch, even though I think 1's gorier, but it's the tone of the second one. But again, we were only going to cover the second one a little bit, but then we get virtually all of Kane's gang. We've got Tom Noonan, we've got Michael Medeiros, Galen George, who's sadly passed away since, and we even got Gabriel Damone, Hob. So we've got the gang. So now what we've got, waiting in the wings, essentially, aside from some tweaking to do, is about 2 hours on Robocop 2, about 90 minutes on Robocop 3, because we got Robert Burke and we got numerous characters from that, including all the bad guys, I think, bar Rip Torn. We got John Castle, McDaggett. We got
maybe Robocop 3 might have the actors who have become famous the most out of all 3 of them.
Stephen Root,
Stephen Root's in there
and everything. And we got him, and I can't believe that he was willing to do it, and he actually gave us a DVD, which was it's not too much to it, but he sent us a Kodak DVD with all his home footage from the 3rd film. There's not a great deal to be seen. So like just this stuff, like, it's like being an archivist, or I feel like Indiana Jones, I always say, where you just trawl in the depths of whatever you can find that no one's ever seen before. And so we've been really lucky with photos we've been given by people, behind the scenes footage. And we even got some, outtake dailies from the first film by some French guys that had never been digitized before. So we've had stuff digitized for the first time ever. So it's just, I mean, Behemoth doesn't even begin to crack.
It doesn't even begin.
And what this project's become.
Connection with Robocop 3, I think, like many of the fans of the original, there's an automatic disconnection there because of the rating. Robocop's one of the very few movies that I would say the rating is a big deal with these movies or within this world, because, in my opinion, old Detroit has gotten so bad that they have to resort to this kind of technology and resort to this idea. But in order to show how bad it is, they have to cross a line of visual, what they show you. And in Robocop, the first one, there's many different versions because of the gore alone. And part 2, yes, you're right. Part 1 is a lot more gorier, but part 2 specifically, I remember the cop coming in on the stretcher and then being spliced open. That scene alone is super gory. But then they did Robocop 3 kid-friendly, PG-13. And this is a big deal. Not just that, but I remember it being Nancy Allen's exit. And that pissed me off. So like I never watched it again because of that. But the rating is a big deal because then comes the remake. And the remake thought they were going to do the same thing. They were going to make it, they're trying to sell tickets, I understand. But Robocop, you have to cross that line in order to really explain how bad the world has got, or how bad
I mean,
Detroit's
Yeah.
gotten, but
you can
in
you
the-
can kind of see the evolution of the films by the third one, because obviously, you know, you've got the cartoon series, you've got the comic books, you've got the action figures. If you've got an action figure line and a comic book and a cartoon on a Saturday morning, you kind of, you know, the
you
whole
lost direction.
yeah, the audience has gone then. I mean, Police Academy was originally a 15 over here, and that had a cartoon series, you know, and action figures. So I think, you know, it was definitely Hollywood at the time trying to market, obviously, for a younger audience to get ticket sales, and ignoring the fact that, you know, the R-rated is what people want. And that's why now you see a lot of films that are coming out. I know about a new Marvel film coming out now, it's going to be R-rated, because they want people go and see it still. Yeah, you won't get the box office you would have got, obviously, with PG-13, but you're going to get the fans on board.
Yeah, and they're going to stay a little bit longer. Those movies are going to last a little bit longer too.
Yeah.
Did you gentlemen have any of the toys?
I had the action, yeah, I got the
I
action
had
figure.
Ed-209 with the
Yeah.
pop and pop. It's
yeah.
kind of crazy to think now that thinking back on it.
I'm trying to see, because right next to me, albeit it's caked in darkness, is I've actually got a Robocop dedicated shrine shelf next to me. I've definitely still got my Ed 209 or Ed 260, wasn't it? Because it was branded for the children's show. So yeah, and Gary subsequently bought me some toys I used to own, but I was one of those children that used to like break and chew everything, you know.
Did you
So I
at some
like
point afterwards, when you got light in there, take a picture? I just would love to see.
Oh mate, yeah, it's my pride and joy. I've got my Robocop shrine to the left, and my Prince shrine to the right. So
Prince,
yeah,
that's another thing. Yeah, you love Prince. I was looking into that and I saw that. Favorite Prince song, real quick.
oh shit, I'm gonna just go Computer Blue Extended from Purple Rain, the outtakes.
Nice. All right. I would die for you. I think it's just gold.
Nice.
I love that. And I am a big fan of the later on ones. So Seven, I think is love that song. I love that
Love
song
Seven.
with a passion.
What's yours, Gary?
My favorite Prince song was Thriller.
Was what?
Thriller was my favorite one.
I didn't hear that.
He said Thriller. He's doing what
Thriller?
my old man does. My old man does this to me all the time. Oh, what's that song he did? Oh, want to be Stan something? Just to
You
get
should have
up
said bad. You should have said bad.
I know, yeah, but I like zombies, so it's got to be Thriller, isn't it?
Party Man's next up there for me. When we get into the Batman soundtrack. So where are we with Police Academy? Moving on kind of to the other ones here.
So literally that has been edited in its kind of base form as a 4-part series.
Yeah.
That's 4 parts on the first, and all films actually. So we've got.
I was gonna say. I'm assuming it's all the movies.
Yeah. So it's 1 to 7, and then it's a TV series, the cartoon series, the action figure line. We've got everybody on that. Everybody who was alive at the time of interviewing: Marion Ramsey, Steve Guttenberg, G.W. Bailey, Paul Clancy, Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got everybody. So that's now been obviously edited into a 4-part series. That will go, once that's been conformed to this issue we had with frame rates, it will go to Chris just to, basically to fine tune. And that hopefully will be probably early next year, maybe mid next year. We've got a lot of interest in it at the moment, strangely enough. We didn't think we were going to have, I love Police Academy, but we've actually had quite a lot of interest in it. I think because of obviously the work on Pennywise and Hollywood Dreams and Robocop, people are looking at obviously our catalogue. So that's our last big one that needs to come out, and then we've got some plans obviously for fresh ones to work on.
There was a documentary I'd seen recently, and it kind of, I think it pertains to what you were saying about you didn't think people would care about these particular movies, but I think some of the forgotten, I mean, 80s was filled with sci-fi and fantasy film. That's when they had been mostly been accepted. And I had seen a documentary on the history of Canon Entertainment.
Oh, it was brilliant. Yeah.
And there's, I didn't realize how many titles they had in their library that they only get to talk about each movie for, I think, less than 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Masters of the Universe was particularly one of my favorite.
My favorite, as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies they've ever done. But I think we're talking about the same kind of audience that would watch these.
It's really weird because when we talk about obviously our portfolio and then we mention Police Academy, we always get a bit of a giggle normally off people. And
I think I did that.
Yeah. And I think I always put it down to it's a guilty pleasure. I think Police Academy is. We were all brought up with it at a certain age.
At the time, they were celebrating comedy. I mean, there's 7 of them.
They were mainstays as well of our youth. They were always out every year. And they got raunchier and funnier and boobs and fart jokes and jokes. And I think they are of the time, they are very kind of like, non-PC. in a very woke world we live in now, they wouldn't probably work well now. But I think
A
because
lot of big names came from that.
well, yeah, it did, yeah. And I think nostalgia makes those kind of things survive. Like all of our things that we love, nostalgia is a huge part of why these things still, have become classics. I love the Police Academy films. I'm really proud to be working on it. Obviously, Chris will get his claws into it, in the next probably 6 months, probably.
Chris, I'm Gary, I'm around the same age as you. Chris, he said that you're a bit younger. How younger are we talking?
35. So I was born in 88. So I was after Robocop.
That's not that bad.
It's not that bad, is it? No.
I mean, you still have a connection to the series.
Oh God. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I it's weird actually. I mean, I'll be like Gary said, in terms of their time, I still can enjoy them and watch them. Like they're definitely like a good Saturday afternoon channel over in the UK, ITV. I always find they're always on an ITV at like Sunday afternoon. And I remember when Police Academy 7 came out, we had Sky, and I used to love watching that. Police Academy 5, I think, was my favorite. Miami Beach, when I was
going to ask you what you guys' favorite one was.
I mean, my only thing with Police Academy is I do find it's just a little bit like, oh man, did I like it that much when I was younger? I still enjoy it, but there's that element of it being of its time. I think it's the second one I like the most now.
Second one is so the first one is the only one that's R. Part 2 PG-13 territory, and then from that moment on, it's PG.
Yeah, I like the fourth one. I think,
Citizens on Patrol.
Citizen Patrol, yeah,
That's the one.
Yeah.
The hot air balloon.
I love Citizens on Patrol.
It's Guttenberg's last. Obviously, it brings back Captain Harris, and Harris connects obviously with Proctor for the first time. I think, and Copeland's back in it, and I love that one.
A lot of great things happening for. Zed falls in love. That's a really.
Oh yeah.
I
believe Sharon Stone is in 4.
Sharon Stone's in 4 as well. Yeah.
And Tony Hawk, the David Spade, the skating crew.
It's definitely. I think for me, it's the pinnacle of all the film. I mean, I love 5, as Chris said. When you go to Miami,
so is 4 the one where they take the recruits on a nighttime, like little?
And they do the voodoo,
and it's a hoax.
They take him out to scare the
shit out of them.
They set him, and they do.
Oh man, I love that scene.
It's
hilarious.
He's a voodoo priest, I think.
Yeah. I think it might be Tackleberry, and it's Bubba Smith. Dude, I more power to you guys for stopping history and reminding everybody that did fucking exist. I believe Key and Peele bought the rights to that.
Yeah,
really?
That was many years ago. I know that Goldberg's been after it as well. Adam Goldberg. Peele did have it at one stage, about 5, probably longer than that, probably. Maslansky still owns it. So Paul Maslansky, he's got to be 90 now. He's been the producer on everything, right from the first film to the cartoon series. He's very proud of what, obviously made him an absolute fortune. But he, I think he was working with Jordan Peele at one stage. Then he started talking to Goldberg. But again, I just think because of where we are now in the current climate, it just won't fit. Whereas you look at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think it's a great offshoot for like Police Academy, that series is. I think you could easily do Police Academy as a new series and kind of connect those two worlds together because it's so similar in a way. The characters are. So I think they need to do a crossover of something like that, bring some of the old recruits into that station or something. That might bring it back a little bit as a kind of a new feel. I don't know. Maybe I'm just dreaming.
So now we're leading into right now. You guys have found a bit of more elevated success, not just because of the Robocop being bought out finally by Screambox, but you have a new documentary out on Robert Englund, the actor Robert Englund. You mentioned it earlier. I believe it's called Hollywood Dream and Nightmares, or
yes, that's it. Yeah,
Dreams and Nightmares. Okay,
yeah.
And it's about to be released if it hasn't yet. I know that you guys had a little bit of a premiere in LA for it.
Yeah, so it's released on streaming on Screambox on June the 6th, and then I think it's 25th of July or 26th of July. It's out on physical, Blu-ray, and obviously DVD in the US. So yeah,
And this is interesting because if we're getting specific here, it's about Robert Englund, not just Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
It's about the career of Robert Englund. You want to, is there anything you would like to kind of mention about that? I know people don't really know too much aside from Nightmare on Elm Street. I know that he had at one point been connected to Star Wars and had introduced, was it Mark Hamill?
Mark
Yeah,
Hamill,
was he connected to the role of Luke?
No, he basically read for Han Solo.
Yeah.
He wasn't really an
Okay.
audition. He wasn't really an audition, but he read for Han Solo and obviously went back and told Mark. I mean, you've hit nail on the head. Just I think in terms of obviously what this documentary is about. It's about the man behind the glove. Everybody thinks of Robert as Freddy, which is great, and that's why the documentary is there. But actually, there's a 50-year career around Freddy Krueger from right from 1970s to now.
Yeah.
And that's what the doc's about. It's about this legacy of a kind of a character actor who's working his way through Hollywood, who then finally gets a role which defines him and blows up, but then limits him to a degree as well. And it's about how Robert then accepts that role of Freddy, and accepts being a horror icon. And actually, could he? There's two ways of going. You either say, "Fuck it, I don't want to do it anymore," and
and fight it over and over and over. Yeah.
Or you accept it. And I think Robert thankfully accepted it and became an icon. So that's what the doc's about, really. Freddy's really.
It's really interesting also to note that it originally was going to be David Warner. Had it been David Warner, we wouldn't be sitting here doing a documentary on David Warner.
That's a weird rumor, because if you there's interviews with David Warner has no recollection of that ever happening. And but if you read the book and watch Never Sleep Again, they claim that Dave Warner was up for it. But there's a picture of a makeup test. But that's actually
I've seen the picture.
Well, that's Robert's face. That's actually Robert's.
Really?
Yeah. If you speak to Dave Miller, who actually was the makeup artist, that bust that they always show is actually Robert Englund's bust. It's not.
Just made to look a little bit different, like old man.
Because the features are quite different to Freddy's features. People assume, oh, that's David Warner bust. Dave Warner has claimed he's never knew anything about it. So I just think it's one of those Hollywood myths, a bit like the Mark Hamill story. Robert's very, very clear that story happened, but then when you read Mark Hamill's tweets, Mark Hamill's very sure it didn't happen, that Mark Hamill's agent got him the role, yet Robert tells his story that Robert got him the role, Robert gave him the sides for Luke Skywalker. So there's always Hollywood myths around, isn't there? And I think it's a nice little story about Dave Warner, but you're right. If Warner would have got it, or anybody else, because in the documentary we cover that Kane Hodder was up for the role of Freddy Krueger originally. Would we be doing a documentary now about the legacy of Freddy Krueger in terms of the impact had on an actor? I doubt it very much.
No, not at all. And that's why Robert Englund is so important, because of what he brought to it. And even the difference between his performance in the first one to his performance in every single one after that is still they let Robert really take over Freddy more and more and more. It became him. So from that moment on, if anybody Jackie Earl Haley, he's doing Robert Englund as Freddy.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's been all over the news today, and Robert must have mentioned it in the last couple of days about he's never going to do Freddy Krueger ever again. I think it's a shame, because I think, whilst he's still here and there's still technology available to, you look at Harrison Ford's in his 70s and he's playing Indiana Jones again in a physical role. Robert, he's very fit and healthy. But I think you're right. But the problem with Freddy Krueger is it's always going to be Robert, and that's the problem. You try and recast it. The character is Robert, and obviously you take away the darkness of that character, but the humor and the wit and the glee in the eye and the twinkle is Robert Englund.
It's complete ownership over a role, isn't it?
Yeah.
With all the other horror icons which we love, Kane as Jason and Nick Castle as the Shape, they've all worn the masks, and all those characters have all been different stuntmen who may have done more than one or two at a time, whereas that role is like tethered to Robert.
You can't take them apart.
You can't split them up.
It's a shame. Yeah. It's a shame because there's a character there, and there's a legacy there, which has so much scope, really, for a younger actor to take on. I mean, Robert was only in his 30s when he did Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, Freddy Krueger was supposed to be an older man, and then he's ageless when he's dead, obviously, and he's his spirit. But Robert was only in his 30s when he did it. I think maybe 36, maybe something like that. But I think it's a shame because Robert's so connected to it, like you can't see anybody else as him. And I think that's gonna. If Robert says no, he doesn't want to do it, we understand that. And I think, I think Freddy shouldn't die. I think Freddy needs to come back, and I think they need to be very clever with Freddy as well. It needs to be very, very clever how they do it. And I think we've all said, me and Chris have discussed this many times. I think it's perfect format for TV. I think it just not Freddy's Nightmares, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, I used to watch Freddy Nightmares.
yeah, not that, but like I think as Freddy as an antagonist and a group of people exploring the dream world and the dreamscape in a series with Freddy Krueger as that kind of main antagonist, maybe other villains in it who obviously are kind of like offshoots of Freddy and different
Puppeteers,
yeah, he's
elements,
puppeteering.
yeah.
I think it's when we talk about
The beauty of Nightmare on Elm Street is it's limitless, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, because it's all in the dream world and you got all these different realities and everything like that.
That's the cool thing about Nightmare on Elm Street also, is that Nightmare on Elm Street to me really heightens why horror is so inventive and why sometimes they should consider it in the Academy Award race, because it's not just the performance of Robert Englund, it's the lighting, it's the way they set the mood, and even with the concept of Freddy, when Wes Craven had written it, was the very first concept is super smart and super clever, because you can't kill him no matter how many times you think that you've figured out a way to kill him. He's a part of you.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so clever. I happen to have an obsession with the Scream series, and I came into horror a little bit later, but that's like Nightmare on Elm Street's younger brother or something, because of Wes Craven connection there. And I would double back, because that's what Scream did. Scream celebrated horror movies, and it made you stop and go back and look at the movies that they were referencing. And Nightmare on Elm Street was one of those ones I really took to, much more than Jason and much more than Michael, because of the personality that Robert brings to him.
Yeah,
which is actually 10 times terrifying.
And I think we've said before, and again, it's always cliche to say stuff like this, and it kind of I don't know, obviously say Robert, he's Freddy Krueger, because obviously Freddy Krueger's a very dark, evil character. But when we've been in Robert's company many times now, and even just those moments where you're just sitting in a restaurant with him and he's just chatting, you'll be talking to him, you just look at him, the corner of your eye, and that kind of movement he makes of his hand or his face, and it's Freddy. It's so strange. And even the makeup's not there. It's that profile of his face and just the way he holds himself and the way his body language is. It's so strange that those two people are so connected. And in one of our bonus features, Eli Roth says that if you love Freddy Krueger, you love Robert Englund. There's no in between. If you're a fan of Freddy, you've got to be a fan of Robert, because Freddy's so much of Robert. And I think the Robert bit in it is the humor, definitely, because Robert's a funny guy. He's a storyteller. He's funny. He's witty. Freddy Krueger's witty. But for all his faults and other stuff, he's a very kind of charismatic character, isn't he, Freddy Krueger? And that's Robert just to a T. And I think so. That's going to be, they talk about. I read today, talk about Kevin Bacon, talk about Richard Brake, people like that potentially playing him, or fans talking. Do they have that Robert feel, or do you need to go completely opposite and have Freddy as completely different? We look at the remake and he's still got the humor. Maybe strip the humor away.
Because in one, the humor is very minimal. In fact, I'd say it's not there at all.
He does the thing with his fingers, doesn't he?
Majority of the movie.
Yeah. I've always said, recently, the character of Vecna for me is the next Freddy. He doesn't do much Vecna in Stranger Things. He doesn't do much at all, yet he's such a presence in that series. And I think he's a brilliant character.
Well, they specifically honored Nightmare on Elm Street with that season. It was down to Robert Englund even appearing in it. But you look at the character. I can see that connection, absolutely.
He doesn't do much, does he? He just stands around waving his hand about. But actually, it's a very powerful force in that series. That's where Freddy should go, I think. He doesn't need to be the wisecracker. A little bit like in New Nightmare, really. If you brought that version of Freddy from a New Nightmare into the modern world, that's a scarier version of Freddy. Uber Freddy, isn't it? Isn't the Joker? He does a few little kind of like Miss Me and Boo, but he's not the the piss taker at all. He's kind of very dark, isn't he, Matt? And he looks great. I think he's grown on me. That look has over the years.
I like him. I like New Nightmare. He gets a lot of shit, but I think they should apply that concept to Scream. I think that this is the direction that Scream could obviously take on, understandably, and do a good job of. And that way you could actually bring everybody who's been dead in the series back. And that's what they did with New Nightmare.
I mean, because we allude in the documentary that that the New Nightmare should have been a bit of a resurgence for the character, but in the end it was an ultimate failure. But everyone recognizes it was the test bed for what Wes did just 2 years later to make it meta. So it's interesting how they kind of, like you said, you know, the lineage from Nightmare on Elm Streets to Scream. You've literally got that moment of watching Wes Craven test it and go, oh, what if we try something a bit out there? But obviously it was just far more successful with Scream. But people have kind of, as Robert says in the documentary, have kind of gone back to reevaluate a bit since Scream. So if anything, Scream kind of helped bolster up New Nightmare.
I have a friend, a really close friend of the show, who produced The Girl in the Photographs, which was Wes Craven's last feature he produced. So he got to, ironically enough, work side by side with Wes Craven and Dean Cundy, and he got to talk to Wes Craven about the Scream series. At that point, 4 had been done, and 4 was the last one he had directed, last movie he directed. But there was this kind of disappointment with of course 3 and New Nightmare kept getting brought up in that conversation as to what that was kind of what he was trying to do with 3. And then they lost Kevin Williamson, and Aaron Kruger comes on and writes it and whatnot. But you said again, when can we expect to see Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares?
So June the 6th on Screambox, and then
Fantastic.
Digital as well, is it? I think.
Sorry?
Digital as well, isn't it? Excuse me, God, frog in my throat.
Yeah. So
like
normally, Screambox normally then a few weeks. I think they do it on Screambox first as an original, then they phase it onto like iTunes then and stuff like that. Don't know. I think I'm not sure if the same day, but I think around the time. Then obviously physical release obviously in July. I mean, and it's getting a Walmart exclusive steelbook as well, which is brilliant. You know, we're very much physical media fans. You can see behind Chris. You know, so yeah, to get one of our projects as a steelbook exclusive.
I got 3 things real quick to end this off. Number one, I forgot to mention earlier, to let the audience know, there are many versions of Robocop for those who are out there still buying physical copies, but specifically one of the newer versions of Robocop has you guys featured on commentary track. And I went out of my way. I flipped my fucking lid when I saw that, and I went out of my way to buy what would be my 3rd copy of Robocop just to have your guys's. And then not only that, but 2 and 3, I believe you have commentary tracks on. So congratulations on that you get recognized for that.
We're really lucky, to be honest. I think
that's a quite accomplishment.
It was at a time as well where we didn't have a deal, obviously, for Robodoc, and you know, MGM was starting to look at the franchise again. Obviously, it was being re-released, obviously through Arrow, through Shout Factory. Sorry, so it was kind of like for us, it was
validation.
Because obviously we knew that MGM would be obviously authorizing what went on the bonus features, because I know particularly we can probably say it now, with part 2 and 3, we were told we had to be nice. We were told we had to be positive about the film.
We can't say anything negative.
It was really hard on the phone.
I would have been like, all right, then I'll just talk about 2. I don't know what to say.
We struggled. I remember we struggled a bit. There was definitely some moments of silence on the commentary where all we could say was like, oh, that's a good bit. Yeah, that's and you're just kind of looking at each other like,
oh, look at that, a jetpack. He's got a jetpack.
The same thing happened.
It's a bit like you were saying before as well, though, isn't it? You know, what you said about, which was mandatory for me, at least. I remember we had a bit of a debate, but about addressing things in Pennywise, like the spider. You know, we want to honor these films. We love them, but we don't want to create puff pieces. We don't want to sugarcoat it. You know, if there were issues on these films, let's talk about it. And we certainly hopefully do that in a respectful way for like Robocop 3. We've got Fred Decker, we've got Robert Burke, both of them, like, you know, they were happy enough to be transparent in their, you know, kind of their dismay and showcasing their attempts for what they were trying to do, you know, with the 3rd film, which I ultimately think was down to, you know, the studio's restrictions and mandate to make it more child friendly. But we've done it with 2, and we've, you know, I can say it now, we've done it with Peter Weller, because he was difficult on the 1st film. And it was, that was the one thing I felt we were missing at first on the 1st film. You've got to be very careful. You know, you don't want to show people in a negative light or in the wrong way or misinterpret. We don't want to sensationalize it, but
at the
people,
same time, it's a documentary. You want to take a snapshot of what was really happening, what really
exactly,
went
yeah.
on.
I mean, to be honest, the first film was, I mean, maybe it's not far removed from our experience making it now for Robodoc. It's probably a curse, but how fraught it was in making Robocop. But what was really cool is getting Peter Weller so late. And to be honest, warming him up a bit. We got 4 hours with him, and I can probably hand on heart say, as someone who's watched all these, you know, live shows or interviews instead of this, we really cracked him. And it took a while. It took about the first hour to get there with that interview. At first, I thought, oh no, I don't know what we're going to do with this footage, because he was kind of more interested in anything but Robocop. But then we hit an hour mark and he completely opened up. And by the end of that interview, what was so nice was to be able to go, like, I think I was with my co-director Eastwood on that, because we were doing it like this on a Zoom while he was being filmed in a studio. But there was an element of like, should we do it? Should we do it? And we thought, fuck it, let's do it. And so towards the end of the interview, you were able to say, look, Pete, people said you're a little bit frosty on the set of Robocop. You know, what do you think about that? And it was just great. He was so honest, you know, and in a way, it was good to hear his side, not, you know, call it an argument, but, you know, he was like, look, I'm wearing this fucking suit. I've got to do these things. I blah, blah, blah. You try fucking
Probably
wearing that
losing a
suit.
lot of weight.
And he was, yeah. And to be honest, we got some fantastic moments of comedy where one person saying something,
and he would respond.
He goes, "That's absolute bullshit. I never did that."
Man, I can't wait.
It was unreal to see, honestly, like what we got out of him.
I can't wait to see it, man.
And he was incredible. It was tough at first. It was like trying to steer an 18-wheeler truck without its tires. And then after a while, when he opened up, it was like, oh my god, we've still got I think somewhere anyway, someone's got the recording of our screens, and as these moments happen, you're literally watching myself and Eastwood on mute, just going. It's like, because he's like, yes, he said that, he talked about this.
That's great.
And it was so endearing to watch. As you said, he can be very stern and professional. Just when I love that moment where it's like, we've cracked you open, let's go for it. So he was brilliant. So
I believe we're gonna have Paul Verhoeven's cameo here in a second.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. And we do address that as well in the documentary. So yeah, we've really it's been a long old slog. We've still got our full-time jobs, which is why it's a bit tough to get us. But here's hoping maybe at some stage we'll be able to take this full time. But for the moment, it's a glorified hobby. We know it's taken a long time for us to get shit out, but we realized we never had enough money to do it. So we're just lucky now we're getting to this place with Screambox, who are sort of guiding us now to go, right, this is how you're going to get it out. This is how you can get that out. And then finally make us look prolific.
My second question, and I'll try to keep this a little bit, I'll try to keep this shorter, because this whole segment is about documentaries and whatnot. And I'm very curious, why documentaries? You guys have done more than one. You've done about 4 or 5 now. You've had your opportunity to do narrative storytelling, but why the documentaries?
I think because, for me, I know Chris might say something different or maybe something similar. I loved behind the scenes from a very early age. I would always try and watch behind the scenes, kind of like things on DVD and obviously bonus features. And same time, I love documentaries. I love true crime. I love kind of like conspiracy documentaries. So putting them 2 worlds together, and I just like exploring. Chris made a valid comment at the very start about this, being like an archivist. It's very much like that. You can delve, and I love when you start getting photographs you've never seen before, and someone's messaging and goes, oh, I worked on so and so, and I've got a box of Polaroids been in my loft for 25 years. That as a fan as well, because we are fans, Robocop is Chris's baby very much. Obviously, Hollywood Dreams is mine, and Police Academy is mine. Chris obviously took the lead on Brewster. So because we obviously love these things, for us it's just great. We are fans at the end of the day. So I think the documentary world has kind of been good to us. Don't think the crowdfunding world has been very good to us, but and we haven't been very good to them. We've made lots of mistakes. We put our hands up, but that hasn't put us off. We're really proud of what we do in terms of obviously producing these things, and we will continue doing it. We're already talking about obviously plans for the next. That's why I think we've found our kind of like niche, because we do these documentaries as fans, but also we do them hopefully as kind of like prolific filmmakers who know what they're doing. We don't just put out shit. We really try our hard to get the best quality. We could easily produce a doc in a year and release it. That's quite easy to do that, but we've delayed things because we want to get it right. We want to make sure we have the right people, we cover the right elements and the right stories. That's why I think we like doing it. And it's jigsaw, isn't it, Chris? It is like a puzzle, isn't it? Putting these things
It's
together
like,
and collating
oh
them.
god, yeah. In terms of the editing, sometimes, you know, especially when, as I said, we got a habit of biting off more than we can chew with these projects. You know, oh, we're supposed to get 20 people. Fuck it, let's get 100. You know, let's get the whole gang here. But ultimately, I can talk about films till, you know, the day I die. Basically, I was brought up in front of a TV, and to be honest, to be able to kind of celebrate these films, and I think in a way it helps us kind of unpack why we love these films. You know what I mean? And do something with this useless knowledge we've acquired from reading, you know, my dad's books, watching
I
the
completely understand that. Yeah.
and kind of just go, right, fuck it, let's make something comprehensive that's the final words, because we're in a day and age now where there's legacy sequels that are never working out too well for the most part. But I think, you know, that's where you're like, right, well, let's just go back to the original, guys. There's no expectations to try and make something new. Let's talk about why those things were so revered, you know, in their day.
I would feel like it's almost a way of saying thank you.
It is,
100%.
yeah.
100%.
We call them love letters, and they are.
Love letters.
It's cliche. It's a love letter to the people who made those, you know, and it is a thank you from us. I'm glad it's us, you know, it's us that's done Robodoc, particularly for Chris, particularly when we were told many years ago by somebody, do not touch it. There's no point in doing it. There's already a book out on it. And we did it. And obviously now we produce probably the world's first dissection of a film as a TV and in a series. And it's probably the world's first documentary on a film, which is a limited series. That's never happened ever before. You know, and I think I'm really proud of that. We've achieved that when everyone told us no. You know, we produced this 4 hours and we were told it's too long. No one's going to. We said we want to be a series, and everyone said never going to be a series. Thank God, ScreamBox came on board and agreed with that. We keep on pushing ourselves. You know, we push ourselves with Robert, because Never Sleep Again is an amazing doc.
Yeah,
Why
it
would
is.
we cover that? But then we push ourselves and let's go beyond that. And let's look at the career. And somebody who's very, very animated, very talkative, very hard to steer actually as a person. I mean,
Very influential.
yeah. So that we push ourselves. So I think it's all about pushing yourself constantly. I think the problem with Robodoc for us a little bit is that we push ourselves so much in 7 years on that. It's going to be, my fear is everything else we compare to that. And I think that and it can't.
We've got no interest in ever doing that again with a film.
And I think it's going to be a one-off in terms of that much in depth into something like dissection. And I said it is the first of its kind. That's how it's been sold, you know. And there's people talking about alien documentaries and stuff like that, dissection of scenes. Brilliant, fair play. Wish you all luck. But this is the first limited series on a franchise. But not only that, there's a season 2 and a season 3 coming out. Of, you know, season 2 is the second film, season 3 is the third film, plus legacy and whatever.
That's awesome.
Series. So I think that in itself is kind of like, you know, we've got to do more, but not to that level.
Again, guys, congratulations! It's quite an accomplishment. I'm really, really honored to be able to talk to you guys officially about your products and what you've done and accomplished. Final question, real quick. Filmbuff exclusive. Every time I have somebody on, I ask them what is their one favorite movie.
Return of the Living Dead is my favorite film.
Return of the Living Dead.
100%.
Nice. All right.
And it's what started all my career now in this, because of that. And Nick and Don started all of this. So yeah, even more so.
Awesome. How about you, Chris?
You know what I'm going to say, but yeah, you've got it on right behind you, mate. Robocop. That was the start.
Cliche.
And I think did you say this already, Mel? You said, I think, you know, whenever anyone asks me what my favorite film is, if they don't know it, or if they're not into film quite as much or genre, you do get a bit of a puzzled look like, oh, really? And I feel so I feel so righteous in saying the reason it's such a good film, when you watch it as a kid, it's great, big, fun, popcorn action. When you watch it when you're a bit older, you're like, oh, I can see actually it's quite satirical, and I understand
it's saying
that
something.
stuff
It's saying
now.
several things.
And now when you're older, you're like, shit, man, this is a really emotional movie. And I've just I've never had anything else quite like that as an experience where it's like, I've managed to look at this film in so many different ways, and it's worked at that level, and that level. There's some films you love as a kid where when you get older, you sort of, you have to tap into that nostalgia of like, yeah, of course it's a wicked film for kids. And I'm not putting down the biggies like Ghostbusters and Goonies, but as much as I adore them and you find things in them, there's just something about like you being thrown into watching something you shouldn't, but yet it works as a kid. And yet shit, somehow you're there now. I'm here, 30 years later going, it's still just as good.
It's still effective. It's still so good.
And so I really feel the name still tarnishes it a little bit, but that's what they said, we got in the interviews,
I have a group of friends over in California. Our whole friendship revolves around Robocop, and some guys would go out to a strip club or whatnot. When their wives are gone, we get together, we watch Robocop. And it's become like this inside joke, but like, that's what we do. We say the lines to each other back and forth. And it's, I'm very proud of that. And I think the movie has aged very well. And I'm very honored to have you guys on. I think what you guys have accomplished is a huge fucking deal, and you'll come to see over time how much you've added to the lore of Robocop. So it's something to be very proud of, the accomplishment to be very proud of. You guys are great. I can't thank you enough for being on here, and I look forward to everything you guys Dead Mouse comes out with, and I will help push.
Thank you. No,
yeah,
and it's nice for us as well. It feels very full circle. When I saw you message me, I was like, God, that reminds me of day one of production or the day before production. So
it is absolutely full circle. I feel so.
thank you.
We'll make sure you see it as well whenever it's possible. We'll make sure. But that's the Screambox. Yeah, mate. Hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Yes, I'm sure I will. I know that we got a huge time difference here. You guys are over there in Australia, yeah?
UK.
Okay, yeah.
All the same.
Yeah,
say that.
There's a Union Jack on the Australian flag.
All right, guys. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for being here on Filmbuff Live. I appreciate it. We will catch up, and I'll let you know when you can see this. And you let me know when everything you're coming out with comes out, and I will be the first in line to get that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Much love, guys.
Cheers,
thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.